Hello and welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name's Nicole. Did I mention that some of the Christmas decorations were going to be up until the end of January? I think I might have mentioned that before, but here we are. They're still up. They're probably coming down this week. Anyway, I'm here to talk about two books that I have read in the last few weeks and haven't talked about yet and want to get into before what am I even trying to say? I want to talk about them before the month is over. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the first book, which is Automatic Noodle. This is by Annalee Newitz, and this is a book that I was reading for a local in-person book club that I'm in. So Automatic Noodle is a cozy sci-fi that was published in 2025, just in August, I believe. And I was really interested when I first saw this book come up, but it's a novella. I don't tend to buy novellas. However, once I saw that it was going to be the book pick for my local in-person book club, I was like, okay. I probably would have had to make that choice anyway because I'm pretty sure this isn't available at my library yet. Now, let me tell you about this book. Automatic Noodle is about a ragtag crew of leftover robots who have been working in a little takeout restaurant, just making whatever little kitsch food that the owners think people will like. However, they wake up to find that not only have they been deactivated, but both they and their restaurant have been abandoned by the owners. And now it's up to them to come together and make the shops and themselves new and meaningful to the community members around them. However, they are up against the sort of dreary climate that's going on. They're finding that they are going to be challenged by their community to do something that's not just good, but great. They're haunted by their past and one-star reviews. So they have everything going for them and yet lots of things against them all at the same time. This covers a variety of topics, including friendship, dealing with your past, community, and culture. And I really enjoyed all the different elements of this book wrapped up in what wasn't really a very long story. And I was impressed how much was in here. I thought this book was very deep and charming at the same time. A lot of the characters were really enjoyable. And yeah, I didn't really find there were a lot of lows in this book, other than that I wish it was a little bit longer so that everything could have been developed a little bit further. That said, I think that the little mysterious element of who is potentially review bombing them went really well and kept the plot moving forward, and there was just enough character development to make it satisfying. I can see why a lot of novellas turn into like short series of novellas because there was definitely something that I don't know if it could have become a series, but left me wanting just a little bit more. One of the other things that I really appreciated about this book was it made you think about your choices in terms of where you eat and why you're eating there, and exactly the impact of, using sites to review restaurants as opposed to just going and trying new places on your own. And I think very similar things could be said about reading books. So, as always, I'm going to rate this, but take it with a grain of salt. And if this is a book that you think you might enjoy, give it a try. That said, I ended up rating it 4 stars. It was a pretty easy win, and I expected it to be. It's a nice book to start the book club year with, keeping it light and moving forward. I feel like this is a book that is really good for people who like cozy sci-fi, especially if you like to think about AI or robots and ethics surrounding the use of them. I really liked that it got into a little bit of the culinary scene and the food critic side of things, and that there was just a dash of climate fiction in there. So if you're looking for any of those things in upcoming reads, this might be a good book for the win. I think there are other books that this kind of reminded me of that I felt like were similar. One that popped to mind is Clara and the Sun. If you liked that book by Kazuo Ishiguro, I think you would like this book and find that it's a lot lighter in tone as well. Two other books that it reminded me of, but I have not read, are also novellas, and that would be Some for the Wild Build, as well as All Systems Red. So definitely similar themes of robots who have jobs and there's complicating factors, but tend to stay in some manner on the lighter side of things. The second book that I read is in no way related to the first one, other than that it is also a shorter story, and that would be The Wild Geese by Ogai Mori. This is a classic work of Japanese fiction. It was published in 1911 between the traditional Edo period and the more westernized Meiji period in Japan. And yeah, it's also a shorter book, like I said. Another interesting factor to consider in this book is that this was written around the same time that Edwardian literature was being written in England. So, two similar time periods, 10 years before The Great Gatsby, totally different writing style and topic and things to consider in some ways. By and large, this book is about a beautiful young woman and her unfortunate fate in love. It is framed by a narrative of a young college student recounting an experience that he had while he was in a boarding house, and it also talks about his very intriguing next door neighbor. The topics that are discussed in this book include love, missed opportunities, nostalgia for the past, which does kind of remind me of The Great Gatsby. You definitely get into traditional versus westernized Japanese culture, and also just the idea of how freedom can have unexpected consequences when trying to move towards a more enlightened state, if you will. So I definitely think that as you follow the life of this young woman and sort of the awakening she has, if you will, she is definitely symbolic of the awakening that Japan is going through at the time. I think there are a lot of wonderful things about this book, including just beautiful scene setting and some beautiful moments of writing that I always enjoy in Japanese literature, especially around this time. You get very heavy feelings of nostalgia. So if you liked that aspect of The Great Gatsby in Gatsby himself, where he's just longing for the things that he's missed out in the past, I think you might be able to connect to this book in the same way, even if you don't understand the things that these characters are nostalgic for. I think the major low in this book for me, other than really struggling to connect with the cultural elements of here, it's describing a place and time that I've never experienced in some detail, which historically can be interesting, but because it is longing for that time period, I myself could not feel the particular longing that the narrator had, but it was interesting to see all the comparisons that he made. That said, there were values and beliefs and truisms, is what it felt like at times, that the narrator has concerning women that I absolutely didn't agree with and did not connect with and found no relevance to in my life. And that was definitely the lowest part of the book for me. That and the fact that it was really poorly edited. Like, there were multiple times in a very short book where there were the incorrect words in places, and it was odd. It wasn't like the words were misspelled. They were correctly spelled. And oddly enough, there were frequently anagrams of what was supposed to be the right word. For example, it might have said that he took hold of the item, and the word that was meant was actually time. It was weird how it worked out. And for a second, I gaslighted myself as to whether or not that was actually happening. But it was. There were repeated anagrams in here that were misplaced. I don't even know how to explain that. It was a really trippy experience. But I was kind of surprised by that because I've read multiple other books by Tuttle, and they, who is a publisher, and they tend to do a really good job. And I don't know that I've ever read a book where it was like not a homophone in the wrong place or just a different word, but was frequently an anagram that was incorrectly in the book. And at one point, I was starting to wonder if this book was supposed to be a puzzle. It's not. I'm pretty sure that was just an editing mistake. Anyway, I'm going on about that way too long. I ended up giving this book 3.5 stars. It was good, but there was just a little something about it that was just a tad too slow for me personally. And I don't know. I think the things of the women started to get to me in the end. That said, this is a book that I would recommend to anyone who likes slow-paced reading, that the entire story just sort of slowly unravels the mystery of itself, and you learn the lesson at the very end. It does remind me of some Japanese short stories that I've written, especially some of their more ancient short stories that are almost kind of like folklore, though that's not the word they used for it. It reminded me of those types of stories where you have this really unique tale going on. And it's even mentioned in this book that the story of this woman feels like a fairy tale, is the word that it's translated as in here. If I can figure out what the correct word is, I'll put it up on the screen. But it does remind me of that as well, partially because I've read a few Japanese fairy tales, if you will. Anyway, if you liked those, you will probably like this book. It does contain a framed narrative, so if you like that style of writing, you may also enjoy this. I would say that two books that I think are well known that are set in the same time period that might be worth checking out are Kokoro. It is set in the same exact time period as that, and also is dealing with this idea of, sort of straddling the new westernization versus tradition. And this author was a very big fan and also intentionally wrote in a similar style as the author of Kokoro. This is also set in the same time period as the Makioko sisters, which I have not read, but I know a lot of people really like and enjoy. So if you wanted to read a book that was set in that same time period and was written closer to that time period, this might be the book for you. So that's it, just two short little books, which feels odd to me. I've read a lot more, but for some reason this month, a lot of my other book reviews are embedded basically in reading vlogs. That's not common for me, but that's just how it worked out. They're kind of hidden in other videos or in plain sight, really. So let me know how your reading month is going. I hope yours is going well. I think mine is going well, but I'm definitely still waiting for a 5-star read. So we'll see if I get one, and I'll talk to you next time.